All right, we have been reading about the Great Depression and World War II and some of the effects of all of that. So we've now gone through the front page of our newspaper and what would typically be kind of like that big middle section of our newspaper. So we're going to read a little bit of this sidebar here, and then we're going to go down to what would be like those bottom sections of the newspaper so I can make sure everybody's getting all the information that they need. So this little section here about economics talks about education and how education relates to economics. And given the fact that during the Great Depression, a lot of new jobs had to be created, education was a really important part of that because the education you get will determine the type of job you get. So we're going to read through this section here, but this is a really good one to share with your parents and maybe have a nice conversation over dinner tonight about education and the choices that are made. Not everybody makes a decision to get an education, and that does not mean that those people are not successful in life. I can tell you that my own father never went to college. He only finished high school, and he ended up owning a business and being pretty successful. I actually was the very first person in my family to go to college and get a college degree because that was important to me for the job I knew I wanted to have. So it's really important to think about that. I know you guys are young and it's early to be thinking about that, but that doesn't mean it's too early to think about the education you want and how it's going to relate to the choices you get to make later on in your life. So let's check out this section here and see what we need to know about education. Help wanted. No experience or skills necessary. Education not required. High pay and excellent benefits. Easy work and short hours. I don't know where to sign up for that job, but sign me up. Sounds too good to be true? Because it is. You'll probably never see a real help wanted ad like that one. The truth is that to get a good job, you need skills and education. We all make choices every day. What to wear, whether to play soccer or basketball, how to spend money, the list goes on and on. Some choices are not all that important. Does it matter if the shirt you have on is yellow or green? Not really. Other choices, though, are very important, and the decisions you make can affect your career, your family, and your life. One very important choice you will have to make in a few years is about your education. The choice you make will help determine your income, how much money you make. We're going to want to highlight that section. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to my screen there. I was trying to click so that I could highlight. Choice you make will help determine your income. I'm going to highlight that because you'll see that on the questions. You may not realize it, but people who drop out of high school usually only make about 65% as much money as those who graduate. Now, if that's not a good enough reason to stay in high school and graduate, I don't know what is. Imagine that it's payday. That means for every $100 a high school graduate earns, a high school dropout will only get $65. If you get a college degree, you'll earn about $143 for every $100 made by someone with only a high school diploma. People with professional degrees, doctors, lawyers, dentists, I don't know why it doesn't say teachers on there, but it should, earn about $174 for every $100 made by that high school graduate. It's easy to see that the more education you have, the more money you have the opportunity to make. Deciding what to do for a living also affects your income. Some professional sports stars, celebrities, and rock guitarists make millions, but most athletes and entertainers earn a lot less. Often they have to take a second job to make enough money to pay the bills. In most careers, there's a wide range of salaries depending on where you live and how good your skills are. Who makes the most money in the United States? Doctors, chief executive officers, also known as CEOs of big businesses, and airline pilots. What about teachers? Well, they didn't even make the list of the top 100 best paying jobs, but they get to work with amazing students like you, and who could put a price tag on that? I don't know who wrote that sentence, but they are the smartest person in the world as far as I'm concerned, because there is no price tag that could be put on spending time with awesome kids like you. All right, I'm sliding down here to the bottom section of our newspaper. So I know it's weird looking at it on a screen instead of having it in front of you, but if the newspaper was in front of you and open, this would be those 4 sections along the bottom. And sometimes we have questions from these sections and sometimes we don't. So I want to go through them and make sure that we know what we need to know from here. Now, this section right here, post-war Arizona, that's important information there that talks about how Arizona changed after the war. Along with all of the changes happening in industry, many changes started happening in homes around Arizona. Household items that we now use every day were just being invented. Television, dishwashers, and microwaves were in homes for the first time. One important invention for Arizonans was the evaporative cooler. You may know it as a swamp cooler. Now, some of us probably don't even know what an evaporative cooler or a swamp cooler is. They're not used quite as often in Arizona as they used to be, but it was basically a very early form of air conditioning. And anybody that's lived through an Arizona summer knows that you cannot live in Arizona without air conditioning. After the war ended, word started getting around that Arizona was a great place to live, especially since swamp coolers allowed homes and businesses to stay cool in the desert heat. Between 1940 and 1960, the population of our state more than doubled. As the population grew, so did the state's diversity. The war had brought more Mexicans to Arizona to work in the mines, farms, and factories. The American Indian population was one of the largest in the country. The African American and Asian American populations also increased. With so many different people living in Arizona and in other states around the country, the stage was set for people who had been discriminated against for many years to demand equal rights. Unfortunately, during the 1950s and 60s, discrimination, or treating people differently because of their race, was happening all the time in every part of the United States. The Civil Rights Movement was a series of events that resulted in laws that guaranteed all citizens equal rights and equal opportunities. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. Martin Luther King Jr. led marches and protests. College students in Greenville, South Carolina, staged sit-ins at Woolworth's lunch counter. The Supreme Court said schools had to be integrated. The Civil Rights Movement changed America and Arizona forever. Next little section here we're going to read is about something called rationing. And if you were listening in the first video, I talked a little bit about something my grandpa used to do when he would eat dinner. At the end of every meal, he would take a piece of bread and basically use it to wipe up anything that was left behind on his plate so that he didn't miss anything. And that came from him having to live through rationing. Rationing was a really big part of World War II because they needed to make sure that they didn't run out of food and things. So let's find out what rationing is, because I know there's going to be some information from that on our questions. During World War II, the soldiers overseas needed food, so Americans had to ration their food at home. To ration is to limit the amount of a good that is used. I'm going to highlight that right there. So basically what that means is that people were only allowed a certain amount of certain things. That's what rationing means. Right now, with the current situation that we're in, there's a little bit of rationing going on as well. We've seen it in the grocery stores that people can only buy one milk at a time, or one carton of eggs at a time, or one package of toilet paper at a time. So we're actually in a time of rationing right now because we need to make sure that everybody's able to get what they need. Each family was given ration coupons, this is what they look like down here, that they used when buying items such as sugar, meat, and butter. People could only buy these goods with their coupons. When their coupons ran out, they had to wait until the next month's coupons arrived to buy them again. People rationed other goods too, including gasoline and shoes. Because people were so limited in what they could buy from the grocery store, many planted gardens in their backyards. These gardens were called victory gardens. Why do you think they were called this? That's an excellent question for you to discuss with your parents. Now, I'm going to skip over this section here on integrity, but I highly, highly encourage you to talk with your parents about what integrity is and what it means. I want you to think to yourself, if you have ever been faced with a difficult decision and nobody was around to see what you did, but you did the right thing anyway, then you have integrity. So you may want to go ahead and read through that section and talk about it with your parents. And last but not least, we have this little guy here, the pygmy owl. Look how cute he is. He's obviously very small because you can see him in a human hand right there. Hold everything, we've got an owl in the way. Wait a minute, who's in whose way? Who? Haha, that's funny. Well, that's what talk is like between builders and the Fish and Wildlife Service. Recently, it has been discovered that the rarest bird in the state of Arizona, the Cactus ferruginous pygmy owl, I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly, I apologize, but I have never pronounced it before. Pygmy owl may be dependent on some of the most valuable land in Phoenix Valley. Builders are currently developing this land for future businesses and homes. It's a pretty sticky problem, and we don't know how it will come out yet. The pygmy owl is a small bird of about 6 to 7 inches. So he is very, very small. We're going to need that information later, so I'm going to highlight that. It has a cream-colored belly streaked with reddish brown. It likes to nest in the cavities of trees and saguaro cacti. That might come up too, where he likes to nest, so I'm going to highlight that. They are most active at dawn and dusk when they feed on lizards, insects, other birds, and small mammals. And there we have it. We've gone through all of the newspaper, and the great thing about having this recorded is that you can go back and check back and rewind and read again. Click back and forth between this and your questions as you're answering them, and you've got a perfect resource to help you out. Hope you guys enjoyed it this week. Tune in for next week's. Bye.